The Macintosh comes out in 1984, and it wasn't long after that relatively normal people had access to desktop publishing. This is a D&D video. Stay tuned. The result was that by the time I was a professional in the industry in the mid-90s, there was a term floating around that I'd heard for a while called the fantasy heartbreaker. They were basically clones of Dungeons and Dragons with very minor changes. And this is where the term heartbreaker comes from, because for the folks who were laboring in obscurity in their garage on their Macintosh using Quark Express or whatever the software was back then, fantasy heartbreaker as a term was derogatory. It was a criticism. And they're called heartbreakers because these independent publishers were going to get their hearts broken when they discovered that they had put all this work and effort, they had learned the software, they had spent their own money to print copies of the books and ship them to Gen Con or their local convention. And when they discovered that nobody cared, that there was no audience for it, that they weren't going to overthrow TSR with their brilliance, it was going to break their heart. And they were going to end up with thousands of copies of this book in their garage for years. That was my experience going to Gen Con, was seeing tons of these products in 1997, 1998. And often we would buy them and collect them and bring them back to the office because we were also independent publishers. Even though we had licenses to big properties like Star Trek and Dune, there were just 4 or 5 of us working in an office. And our hearts went out to these people because we remembered being those people. I'm here to give you permission to roll your own setting from scratch, but my advice is that you should be ready to break your heart. You should be ready to put things in it that are weird or idiosyncratic, that are your reaction to the things you've seen in Fantasyland or D&D. I think if you're going to make your own setting, it should be a result of your highly developed opinions about how silly something in D&D is, or how there's something important missing that you think belongs in there. These can be house rules for things like the magic system, or it can be purely based on the setting. If you don't have a strong opinion about something in either D&D or the generic Fantasyland that we all assume D&D campaigns are set in, then what's the point of making your own setting? There are already dozens of pre-generated settings out there, some of them quite good, going back 20 and 30 years. It's far more important that you are in love with the world that you're running. And that means you have to be ready to get your heart broken. Why is there magic? Where did the gods come from? Why are there elves? These are the kind of questions that if you don't have opinions about, then there's plenty of pre-generated settings out there for you. Tolkien had opinions about this stuff. He had highly developed opinions about the way dwarves and elves had not only been portrayed in popular culture, but also the way it was spelled. He spent years fighting with editors who wanted to change the V's in dwarves and elves back into F's. That's how noodly it can get. It can be so noodly that what's important to you is whether or not we spell these words with F's or V's. That can be the thing that drives you moving forward, and why not? It's your campaign. It belongs to you. Put the things you like in it. Tolkien wanted to call elves gnomes for a long time. The Noldor were originally called gnomes. Thank God we dodged that bullet. So you get the idea. If you're going to create your own setting, you might as well put the stuff you believe in it. And that means you need to believe in things. You need to have opinions about the bones of the setting and the rules. The flip side of this, however, is that your players did not show up to play in your campaign. They showed up to play D&D, and they showed up to play their characters. So even at your table, even amongst only you and a handful of friends, it's still virtuous to compromise on these issues. You might decide that there are literally no dwarves in your world, and one of your players wants to be a dwarf. Well, now you have to sit down and have a talk. How important is it that they are a dwarf? Could they be a gnome? Could they be a halfling? Could they be a human of short stature? Do you have a reason why there are no dwarves in your campaign? And is it possible to make an exception without breaking your world? I find if you sit down and explain to your players why your campaign is weird the way it is and why it's important to you, that helps get them on board with your weirdness, and then they're willing to meet you halfway. But at the end of the day, your campaign is still a product. You are not the only consumer. You're hoping that your players will also become consumers. That means you need to do a little song and dance and sell them on your ideas. What matters to you about Fantasyland? When you read The Lord of the Rings, when you watch Game of Thrones, when you read about Dungeons and Dragons in the Player's Handbook, do you have reactions to the things you're reading? Are there things in there that you think are dumb? Are there things in there that you think are missing? Put those things in your campaign setting. Feel free to change the entire world, throw out whole species, throw out entire magic systems systems if you want. In preparation for this video, to try to illustrate the point that you should, not just can, but should make your campaign setting as weird and idiosyncratic as it needs to be in order to be something you're in love with, I went on Twitter just a couple hours ago and said, hey, tell me about the weirdest thing in your campaign setting. And as of now, it's only been 2 hours, and this tweet has 400 likes, but over 800 responses, which is super unusual. Nico Harper, for instance, said, everybody's already dead, the campaign takes place in purgatory, so dying doesn't matter. That's crazy, but I love it. The idea that we're all already dead, so that character death is pretty inconsequential. That's a major change, not only to the setting of D&D, but also the rules. I love this response. My campaign only has one city with about 1 million people in it. There are 2 suns. There are 3 moons. There are 40 hours in a day. You can see what's important to this person, right? There are 40 hours in a day and a 440-day calendar with each day named differently. I don't even know why I made it that complicated. And this prompted a response that I quite liked from somebody going, how did you come up with 440 names? But you can tell just by reading this what was important to that person. What was important was the calendar, the celestial mechanics of the world. These were the things that held their interest, that they were in love with, and they put what they were in love with in their campaign. One of the common threads in these 800 responses is people who have very highly developed ideas of why there is magic. Like, for instance, the world is set between a binary star system, and magic is a consequence of the strange fluctuation created from being so close to them. This is somebody who put a lot of thought into why is there magic, and they have an interesting answer. One DM says there are no teleport or plane shift spells in their setting, in their rule. This is another change more to the rules than to the setting, but has a big impact, by the way, on dungeon masters running medium to high level games. I know. I had a bunch of people respond saying there was no magic in their world, or that there was no arcane magic, or that there were no gods. And that instantly I find interesting. I find anytime you put restrictions on choices, that's when players and you as a dungeon master start to get really creative. This is a response I loved. My setting, says Jeremy Bullock, is prehistoric, ages before most traditional PC races will exist. The races are only Yuan-Ti, Sahagwin, Bullywugs, and 6 different homebrew sub-races of lizard folk. No written language means no wizards, fire is a jealously guarded secret, and Stone Age weapons are fragile. Now this is somebody who has put a lot of thought into not only their setting, but how it would affect the rules. And this is extreme, I think, but I immediately had a positive reaction to it. That's the only point of this video, is my advice to you that if you're going to create your own world, make sure that you have opinions about what is cool and you put that stuff in there. Because otherwise, what's the point of rolling your own? I'll put a link to the tweet in the doobly-doo below, just because there were not only a ton of responses, but then a whole bunch of people reading those responses and telling other dungeon masters they thought their ideas were cool and asking them questions, which I think is half the reason us dungeon masters come up with this kind of nonsense, is because we want other people to go, whoa, that's really neat. That's it. That's the whole video. Just my advice to you that when you are creating your world, if you are going to make a world from scratch, to put the things that you think are neat in it. Thanks for watching, folks. I know it was a short video, and you may get 1 or 2 more short videos before the end of the month, but we are in the process of actually launching the D&D stream that half the Kickstarter was for. And that's going to happen this month. And there's a whole bunch of work we are doing behind the scenes to launch the stream, all of which is sunk cost stuff. It's not going to be ongoing. Our goal is that once the stream is going, it just is going to take 1 day a week on my end to prep D&D like normal and then run for you folks. And then after that, my work on Strongholds and Followers is done. All the work getting the stream ready to launch is done, and we'll be able to make more interesting videos and do other cool stuff. We will make a video announcing the date and time of the stream, so don't worry, don't freak out. You haven't missed anything. There hasn't been any announcement. It'll probably be a week before we go live, a week to 5 days before we go live. And that video will tell you everything you need to know to be able to watch the stream and feel as though you have all the same information that the players have. You'll get access to all the handouts and notes I made, and the video will sort of fill folks in on the setting and what you've missed. Because the new campaign does sort of quasi pick up after the last one left off. The stream will be uploaded to YouTube, so if you don't want to come hang out on Twitch and you don't want to see it all happen live, you don't have to do anything. Just sit and wait for a YouTube alert, and eventually you'll get to watch the stream. Speaking of Twitch, we are going to play NetHack tonight, Monday night, because we're having a crazy, incredible run with Tarna the Valkyrie. I think we might ascend. Knock on wood. Let me put it this way. I've never done this well at NetHack and not ascended, which means since I've only ascended once, this is the second best I've ever done. We basically have our entire ascension kit. We have magic markers and we can write blessed scrolls of genocide. We wiped out all humanoids to get rid of mind flayers, and that meant also all halflings and gnomes and dwarves. The stream's a lot of fun. We don't just play NetHack. We hang out. We talk about a lot of stuff. We talk about D&D. That's tonight. NetHack on Twitch. Tomorrow night, last game wins. We will probably play Codenames. And then this month, we will launch the D&D stream, the weekly stream, and there is no one more excited for that than me. I cannot wait to show you what we've been cooking. That's it, folks. Make your campaign setting weird, put the things that you believe in it, and listen to your players and accommodate them when they have strange reactions to it. Until next time, peace out.